Unmasked tanked in the States, and we spent most of 1980 inactive. We didn't have a drummer anyway. The single Shandy was a hit abroad, however, and we booked a tour of Europe and Australia for the fall. But before we could play live, we needed a drummer. Auditioning people was very strange. We didn't want big-name drummers. We wanted somebody to come out of nowhere. It wouldn't have made sense to have Anton Fig or some other known commodity dress up as a black and silver giraffe or whatever. Bill placed a cryptic ad in some music magazines, and we also spread the word. Bill started to get tapes and photos and bios and lots of phone calls. He went through the materials, and we periodically invited groups of potential replacements he had filtered to audition with us. We decided we didn't want a drummer who played like Peter. The ones who made the best impression on us played what you might call English. They played on the backbeat, and whether they were playing double bass drums or not, they revered the same bands we did. Peter had enough trouble keeping time on a single bass drum and snare, so the idea of him playing two bass drums was out of the question. It wouldn't have made sense in the context of what we were doing anyway. Using a double bass drum in rock came about as a way to emulate what John Bonham of Led Zeppelin managed to do with one bass drum. His foot was so fast that it took most drummers two kick drums and both feet to mimic it. We didn't set out to find someone with a double kit, but we also didn't want to impose boundaries or limitations on a new member. As long as we were getting somebody new, we figured we should be willing to move forward. One guy who auditioned was a little stove repairman from Brooklyn named Paul Caravello. He was tiny with a huge head of hair and no airs or attitude. The first thing he did was ask us for our autographs. At first, I wasn't blown away by his playing, but everyone else in the room, including Vinnie Poncia and Bill Aucoin, thought he was great. We brought the guy back for a second time, and he turned out to have a good voice with the same raspy quality Peter had. He was also a quick learner. We had found our guy. Paul wanted to change his name, and we wanted him to change it too. We didn't need three Pauls in the band since Ace also shared that name. His first suggestion was Rusty Blades, which we vetoed quickly. Thankfully, the name game was short-lived when his second suggestion was Eric Carr, a name that sidestepped any obvious cartoon rock star moniker. He seemed like a good soul. Some of the other people who auditioned had acted like rock stars, thinking they would gain points for that. Eric was sweet. He eventually proved to be tortured in his own way, but he certainly was a much-needed breath of fresh air in the wake of Peter's departure. He had told us stories about repairing stoves, going to an apartment and opening up stoves to find all kinds of bugs and beasts crawling around inside. And we wanted him to know he wouldn't be a second-class citizen and KISS. So once we told him he was in the band, we did two things to welcome him. First, we bought him a silver Porsche 924. I somehow became the guy who was supposed to watch over him and groom him, teach him. He approached me after he got the car. "Can I have it painted camouflage?" "Absolutely not," I said. I didn't think he should take a sleek imported sports car and turn it into a circus mobile. Then I took him shopping at a place called the French Jeans Store. They sold, surprise, French jeans. I helped him pick out a new wardrobe. He'd need it since we were leaving for a European tour soon. It took some time to figure out a character for Eric. Heaven forbid we put him in a character people already knew. That seemed too obvious to us, and maybe sacrilegious. Originally, he was going to be the Hawk. We had a costume built with a protruding chest and feathers all over it. He painted a beak on his nose, but he looked like the mascot for a high school football team. All that was missing were the big foam chicken feet. It was horrible. Fortunately, he came up with the idea of the fox. He wore the same size boots as Peter, so we used existing boots and had the platforms built up even more. The boots ended up being like stilts, and he still looked tiny next to us. Eric got thrown in at the deep end of the pool. We had become comfortable dealing with the world we operated in. Basic stuff, like handling women's sexual advances and the media or acting properly in a restaurant. Eric had to learn on the fly.